Hello, and welcome to another Stray Thoughts. It's been a while since I've been able to sit down and just talk to the camera properly. Been doing a lot of edits out of personal journals to get the thinking out there as I go along, but I wanted to take a minute and go through some notes because I've been piling up notes about all kinds of things I'd like to discuss, and so I thought I'd take a minute tonight and just dive into a few of them. The first one at the top of the list actually grabbed me right away. And the note I made is, what is healthy? Naming the problem is not the same as implementing solutions. I say we need better models, plans, and metrics. And the reason I'm talking about this is because, this is true. There's a saying that if you can name it, you can tame it. And I believe that's true, but I think we miss the part between naming and taming, and there's a bit of distance there because it's a process. We really do need to identify there's a problem. That's AA. The first step is admitting you have a problem. And being able to recognize that something is problematic, like the way this is set up. Sorry. Being able to recognize that something's problematic and to identify what it most likely is, and then you say, okay, so now we've made it to step one, right? What happens next is we have to actually learn about that, understand where it comes from, understand how it impacts our lives, excuse me, and how others experience it, as in other people in our life who have to deal with us dealing with it, and how other people who've had struggles with the same things have experienced it. I think that's sort of the next step up from saying, oh, okay, I have a problem. I've identified what I think it is. I've given it a name. And I think that's where a lot of modern mental health kind of almost peaks. It gets to the point of giving a diagnosis. And then usually it's about having some talk therapy or medication, but not with any kind of a real care plan or a timeline or an exit strategy. And I think that's part of why we don't see people getting much better. Mark Manson had said something about this, saying that clearly self-help doesn't work, or everybody would use it, get better, and get on with it. Something to that effect, in his own inimitable way. And yeah, it's generally true. Now, I have come across some materials that really do make big movement if you can get into it and really do the work. I'm very grateful to have found that. I definitely needed big movement. I'm still making moves. That's what this project is. This is me finding my way from just beyond there. But before I get too far out on that, going back to the point where I think the most critical failure happens when we say, oh, okay, I've got my diagnosis and now I'm going to talk about it. Talk therapy has its virtues, its benefits. There are many things about it that I'm sure are actually quite helpful, but I don't know that it's proven itself to be a broadly effective cure for anything. And I do have some concerns that depending on the issue, talking about it could likely make it worse in the way that we're practicing re-experiencing the troubles in our lives. We're practicing getting good at focusing on what the problems are. And if it's done correctly, that's not really what you're supposed to do. But in my own experience, and according to what others have told me, you can spend years sitting in someone's office or now on a Zoom call for an hour or more at a time, once a week, really delving into that and not being given an effective map for how to navigate through and beyond it. And I'm trying to imagine how that would work if it were actual conventional medicine. So you go to the doctor and you have, I don't know, you have a mysterious bump right here. And the doctor looks at it and says, oh, that's such and such a thing. Here's some medicine. Sends you off. You go home and, it's not getting any better. In fact, it might be getting worse. And you reach out to the doctor. He says, well, tell me what's going on. You say, well, it was just a little bump and now it's a big bump and it itches. Oh, okay, well, how's that feeling? Well, it feels hot and swollen and itchy and I don't like it. Oh, okay. Well, let's try adjusting your medication. And then you adjust the medication, and now it turns purple and flaky. Like, and you're like, okay, well, it's not the same, but it's still not good. I'm not happy with it. And, this just goes on and on and on for years. I think most people get frustrated. They try to find another solution, but when it comes to talking about our thoughts, our emotions, our experiences, it's like people go for years and years and years, sometimes more than a decade, to just talk about the problems. And I feel that's it's almost that the clinician has a responsibility at some point to look at a person and be like, I don't think I'm getting you beyond this. Let me reach out to a colleague and see if they can help you. Try a new approach. Try something different. Because in that metaphor, it would be more like the doctor just keeps giving you more of the same medicine, being like, I don't know why it's not getting better. You must be doing something wrong. Like that's almost what it feels like sometimes when you get to the point where you're just walking in circles around stuff in counseling. And I think that we really do need to develop better plans. People need, if they're working with a professional counselor, they probably need a care plan and ideally an exit strategy to say, look, what if we block in 12 sessions, and we use each of those intentionally to maybe the first few are to really get a grasp of it and maybe to just talk through some of the feelings and get into a place that we can get inside the problem and process some of the emotions. But then to say, okay, and the next one's going to be talking about where we want to be. And then we're going to talk about how we close the gap. And then we're going to try some skill building exercises. And we're going to go out and practice things and make lifestyle adjustments. And maybe run a little bit of a differential about how do you spend your time. Because if I came in and flipped on the news and cracked open a bag of Doritos and grabbed a Sprite, and I sat down and I watched all the bad things happening, eating this highly processed food that's not nourishing, that is bad for me, and I just sat there for an hour or two a day doing that, I'm pretty sure my mental and physical health would decline. And I can say this because I guess I haven't done those together, but as a kid that was my move, to get a big bag of Doritos and a 2-liter of Sprite and just sit there and kill it in front of TV. And, during the fun of 2020, I spent a lot of time watching the news, which I usually don't. Both of them made me feel really sick, and I think of how many people are doing something like that and not thinking anything of it. Or maybe it's not what we're doing, maybe it's what we're not doing. Maybe we don't realize how little time we spend out under the open sky. And there's something, I forget, Huberman talked about this, there's something about having that elevation above us that's good for our sense of well-being, and just getting out in the fresh air and being present with nature and the infinite space that is all around us all the time, and connecting with that, having a sense of context of how small we are and how improbable and how wondrous this is, really brings it home for me that there are only so many days on earth I get to choose what I do with my time. And I may live beyond those days, but I may not get to choose. I may be sick and infirmed and unable to do the things I would choose. And so I think helping people to focus in on what it is they have in the moment, which is, by the way, the moment, and the opportunity to use it in different ways, I think getting people to that place through structured care that highlights the value of staying engaged and staying agentic, or at least getting back to those things if we've lost that. And I really feel that there's a responsibility on people who go into those vulnerable, intimate, innermost spaces of our psyches where we have all kinds of hurt and fear and insecurity and confusion. And they need to come in with a lamp and a map and a compass, and they need to know the terrain, and they need to be able to lead people out. And I see so many people just sort of get stuck at the ranger station talking about things and not really getting anywhere. And I don't know. I'm not here to bash on the way mental health is practiced these days, but I do think it's interesting that we take it for granted that we're like, oh, I got a diagnosis and some meds and I go and I talk to a guy. And it's like, is your life better though? Are you really feeling more of who you are? Are you feeling more capable? Are you feeling more connected? Do you have a greater sense of fulfillment? Because I'm not sure that we don't expect that on some unspoken level, like, oh, I'm gonna go into therapy and then I'll feel better. It doesn't really work that way. It's just you and a trained professional talking through some stuff, and it's what do you do with that conversation, and what do you take from that, and with what you take from that, what do you do next? And I think maybe as we talk about mental health, we should address the process required to move through things and give people a sense of time. Because if you're just dealing with, I don't want to say just, if what you're dealing with is grief about one loss, in about 6 months, you really should be able to be back on your feet, feeling a lot more aligned with life, and that you've had a chance to process and integrate a lot of the emotions around that loss. If you've had years and years and years of complex trauma, you might want to pencil in a good 3 to 5 years before you're at a point where you're starting to feel a little more, I don't know, yourself, more functional, more at ease, whatever it is that is the goal in that process. But understand there are going to be different timelines for things, and I think giving people a sense of that and working within that, either individually or with clinicians, probably helps bring a lot of focus and structure and helps convey that work along a lot more quickly. And I think the lack of that is very troubling. I never mind somebody telling me, look, this is going to take a long time and it's going to be hard. What frustrates me is when somebody's like, yeah, we can get in there and talk it through and we'll see where it comes out. I'm like, well, now I have no sense of, I lose my bearings inside of that. I'm like, how many weeks, months, years have we been doing this that I feel like we're just having the same conversation over and over? It's Groundhog Day, but you know, nothing's progressing. I'm not learning any lessons. I'm not developing new skills. I'm not changing my approach, because ultimately mental health is on us. We have to be the ones to make those moves, to make those changes, to process the emotion, to adopt these belief changes and work with mindset and all these other tools that are available to us that we see work so well. This is why I say, you know, Mark Manson says self-help doesn't work. Mostly it doesn't, but there are certain skills and certain tools that we can pick up and utilize that will definitely help move us along quite a bit. And I feel very blessed to live in an age when I can jump on YouTube and listen to the best and the brightest people out there. It can be overwhelming. There's so much information, but if I go with an idea of what it is I'm trying to address or remedy, and I have a little time to, if I could have just sat down and watched Netflix instead, I'm like, okay, take that time and put in some search terms and pull up some content that might give me insight. And over the years, I've been able to just stack and stack and stack the skills and the tools and develop greater competency with them, which is also part of us having a sense of self-worth. Feeling competent is important to our sense of well-being and our sense of self-worth. And just the work of saying, okay, I'm going to take on this skill and try to get stronger at it, or I'm going to pick up this tool and find out how I can use it in different ways and which of those ways best suit my purposes. And then I'm going to learn how to bring the skills and the tools together and sort of test out how everything you can mix and match everything to give the most optimal results. And the resources are there, but it's a bit overwhelming, and I understand why people maybe aren't getting the full benefit of that, especially when life is as busy as it is. It reminds me of those old westerns where somebody would start shooting at another character's feet to make them like dance around the bullets. It feels like we're living like that, and so I get how people may not have time for 3 hours of Andrew Huberman's invaluable wisdom, but there are ways of accessing shorter format pieces that do distill the core elements of that and give us such good guidance. And yeah, I think that whether you're working independently or with a clinician, you're going to want a time frame. Say, look, I'm willing to give this 6 months, 7 years, whatever it might be, before I really think that I've done my best with it. And you can do things concurrently. You can be doing work with a clinician and be doing a program independently, and then you can be stacking life skills on top of that. And ultimately, over the years, you could be rotating through different schools of thought and trying out different exercises, and there's so many ways you can do it. But I do think that we need to be more focused on skills and learning to work with different tools and learning to combine them, and ultimately just being more proactive in our own well-being. This is why I talk about mental fitness. Like, you don't expect the doctor to make sure you have a six-pack abs, or 8-pack or whatever we're now pushing for. We're gonna have 20-pack anyway. Doctor can tell you need exercise. Doctor can even tell you what exercises to do. They can check in with you and keep you accountable, but you have to put in the crunches. That's, if you want washboard abs, that's what you need to do. And it's true with mental health, is you got to get up and do the work yourself. And I guess what I'd say to those of us on the consumer end is we need to be far more proactive. We're the ones who have to do the work, and we're the ones who have to live with the results or the lack thereof. And I would definitely say to anybody who's working with a counselor who has them feeling unheard or frustrated or stuck, or that they're even maybe getting worse or feeling mistreated, that's probably, you don't need a timeline. That's probably enough to say, I need to take a break from this. You can step back, reflect, decide whether you want to resume with them, with somebody else, pursue a different kind of work. But if you're working independently, to definitely try and find programs that you can follow through with as much as possible. And I'm not saying you have to pick one program and stick with it for years on end, but find work that you're going to be able to follow through with and hopefully take something away that you can continue to use as like a cheat sheet for life. Little things you can fall in on that in the moment really help you. Like physiological sigh, for example. When I find I'm getting a little stressed out, does a lot of good. Again, thank you, Dr. Huberman. But that's a quick and easy one that stays with me. And when I'm like, I get too wound up sometimes. Like, stop, breathe, get your system back to a level state, and come again. And so even if I'm not having, say, an anxiety attack, if I feel just my levels going out of balance, it's wonderful to be able to go in and use my own breath to bring my system back online in a way that I feel sound and stable and ready to execute the next phase. And so, yeah, it's important we don't get caught up in diagnoses and reliant on medication and stuck in Groundhog Day with a therapist that isn't really helping us to get to where we want to be in life, to have the quality of life we desire and deserve. If you're showing up to do the work, nobody's entitled to anything, but if you're putting in the work, you should be seeing the results. It seems to me that at that point you can say you deserve it. And just by dint of being a human being, we deserve to feel okay, at least okay. No guarantee on happy or anything else, but okay. That's a bare minimum, and everybody deserves that. So I hope that as we go on, we can, name it, but also take all the steps required to really tame it and free ourselves that, what is it, the mind's a good servant and a bad master. Have a good servant at our disposal and enjoy the mastery of being in charge of our own state of mind, our own relationships, our own outcomes ultimately, and hopefully being able to make those everything we really dream of. Okay, that's my piece on that. Thank you as always. I'll look forward to seeing what's next. Take care.